Ever heard of this game? Probably not. Secret of Evermore was made by Squaresoft about the same time as their other release that same year, Chrono Trigger, but this game received substantially less coverage. As you probably guessed just by how it looks and the fact that it's a Square game, it's an RPG. Zelda style, but still an RPG, taking place in, where else? Evermore. The story of this game is that 4 people in some mansion on a hill make a parallel world with 4 areas designed by them, each of which they are now trapped in. One based on prehistoric times, one based on Roman and Egyptian times, one based on medieval times, and one based on the common sci-fi stereotype of the future. These worlds all have their own different feel and style, but unfortunately you don't really gain the ability to go between them until very late in the game, and when you actually start looking around, the world is very limited in size, and its small size is really pushed in your face. This game is a bit different from most RPGs in that it's a very short and very linear game, running in at only about 15 to 20 hours, which even for a Super Nintendo RPG is pretty short. For a comparison point, it took me about 40 hours to beat Super Mario RPG, but then again I was collecting everything in that run. This game also doesn't have much when it comes to side quests and secrets. There are a few minor things you can find, like a few extra alchemies and items, but nothing more than just finding someone or being at the right place at the right time. And I had the strategy guide when I was younger, so I don't think I missed anything. However short the game is, however, the main quest is certainly a lot of fun. You get a huge variety of enemies depending on what world you're in, and most of whom have a balanced attack pattern, which bears a striking resemblance to your own. Remember, most. You also get a number of weapons and alchemies to fight all these enemies with, all of which can be upgraded. The weapons are 4 variations of the sword, axe, and spear, though the difference between the weapons are minimal. Unless you choose to spend a lot of time gaining experience for each one, you'll notice almost no difference in range or speed. All the weapons take about 200 kills to upgrade fully. That's 2,400 enemies that need to be slaughtered to upgrade all your weapons and unlock the special moves. However, within the classes of weapons, the moves are all the same, and the sword and the axe moves are incredibly similar, while the spear gains the ability to attack at an extreme distance and through multiple enemies. Also, the spear has the advantage of being more powerful than the sword or axe in every class excluding the future one. The only real advantage with the sword and the axe is that it has a more circular range, and that's only after being charged entirely. Speaking of the charging, to do standard damage for all your weapons, you have to wait 2 whole seconds to let your weapon charge to 100%. The percentage can also be drained by sprinting. To charge the weapon to the 2nd level of damage, you need to hold the attack button, Mega Buster style, for 2 more additional seconds. And for the 3rd and final level of damage, you need to wait 2.5 more seconds, which is fucking annoying. I may seem a bit exaggerated here, but remember, you have to do this over and over again with each weapon if you want to do decent damage. 1 or 1/2 second might have been fine, but this is just too much for an attack that needs to be done over and over again. A preferred system would have been cutting the time to the standard damage by 25% each time you level up a weapon, and cutting the time for the first level by 25% as well when you're fully upgraded. That would have kicked ass. And if they changed up the enemies a bit to make them more difficult, that would have worked perfectly. Speaking of things being difficult, I'd say this game has a pretty well balanced difficulty. Not too easy and not too difficult, though most of the bosses are heavily reliant on distant weapons, but are still pretty easy, though quite epic at times. Most of these bosses come after going through some dungeonish area, with a few exceptions, such as the first mini-boss. These dungeons are sometimes completely linear, and sometimes not straightforward at all. But not to the point of annoyance, except maybe for the cave maze, the forest maze, and Omnitopia as a whole, each of which are a giant pain in the ass to navigate for their own reasons. The forest is just too damn big, and the only clue you get is the weird creature in the trees you're expected to notice. The cave maze is dark and confusing. That's all I gotta really say about it. Thankfully, you only have to go through it once. And Omnitopia is too big, too repetitive, too annoying, and has too many enemies. It also relies too heavily on your dog for help. I'll get into that now. You play this game cooperatively with your dog, who has a stronger attack than the kid, only needs to be upgraded for 1 set of attacks, and therefore will upgrade more than likely on its own and remain strong through the rest of the game. He can also be controlled with a second player, but you can do it yourself if you don't mind this computer taking control of the main character. In some parts you have to control the dog separately, though the main character is usually safe from enemy attacks during this time, so no worries. Unfortunately, this ability isn't used quite as well as it should be, resulting in fairly simple puzzles. What a waste. Despite these setbacks, the dungeons and puzzles are still satisfying and flow well enough through the rest of the game to make the game never truly have a big stop. Except maybe those annoying dungeons I've already talked about. There are items you can find everywhere. In towns, people freely let you rob them under the belief that you'll pay them back. Dumb shits. And although you can find ingredients among other items literally lying on the ground, you'll still need to buy stuff from merchants with reasonable prices. But let me explain the international money system in this game. The money from one place may be more valuable or less valuable than money from another place, and in order to get the worth value in a newfound form, you need to convert it. Sounds simple, but a common problem is that when you move from world to gain ingredients or items, by the way, the Mode 7 effects are pretty cool. Anyway, when you go international item hunting or ingredient hunting, you have to keep going to the money switcher or merchants, who aren't always close by the landing pad, making it a pain in the ass just to switch your money. Still, the money system works fairly well, and since enemies also carry money, you can gain some cash if you have the patience to try to level up a weapon or alchemy. 2 birds with 1 stone! Money can't buy everything, though. Many items you can only gain through the surprisingly depthful and enjoyable trading system, making you actually think about how to save money and make it fun. Capitalism for the win. The only real problem with this system is that there is too much you have to bring to the medieval world to gain some one-shot items. And in fact, there are some regular items that are only one-shot, so if you want to get the wizard coin, you're going to need to start the whole fucking game all over again. These items work as small boosts to your character, which add to the upgrades you gain as you level up and gain armor. Speaking of which, the armor has defensive properties, of course, and with about 3 different armors per world, you got a lot to upgrade to. The only problem with this is that the upgrades are far too quickly reached, meaning you'll probably have them for about 80% of that world. Your characters both regularly level up with experience, and there is no level roof, gaining health, weapon attack strength, defense against direct attacks, and alchemy strength and defense. Staying with the alchemies, you get a ton of weird alchemies. It's your job to sort out the truly useful ones from the weak ones. This wouldn't be so bad if there weren't so many damn weak ones that even after being upgraded are barely useful. The only one I saw that was completely good, almost completely off the bat, was Crush. My recommendations? Defend until you get Barrier, heal until you get Super Heal, cure until you get Miracle Cure, energize, crush, regrowth, double drain, revive, and nitro. Now to talk about the graphics. The world is nice and colorful and the atmosphere is nicely set, but the graphics can get a bit repetitive in dungeon-like areas and in some towns, adding further confusion to the navigation. Now on to the music. My biggest problem with the music is that you don't really hear it enough. You mostly just listen to the sounds of nature. But when you do hear it, damn. Music is catchy and sets a great atmosphere. Now let's talk about the story. This is a Square game after all. Thankfully the story helps drive the want to progress through the game and keeps wanting you to keep going. Not that it's very good, but it's pretty funny and almost seems to act as a parody of most RPG stories with a fairly predictable ending. Unlike most Square games, the focus is on a more straightforward adventure. So if you're someone who just plays games straight through like my brother, you'll probably love this game. I do believe this game is underrated, but not criminally underrated. It's fairly rare and will get you about $50 on eBay. It's not something I'd expect to be on Happy Video Game Nerd's immediate to-do list, but it's still very good and I'd check it out if it goes on Virtual Console or comes up on eBay for a cheap price. I give it an 8.5.
Had enough of games that you hate. Let's talk about some games that are great. He'd rather let the people know about the underrated classics of old than bitching us about shitty games.
Why is this guy walking on water? Who does he think he is? Jesus Christ?